Hey everyone, and welcome back to Promptly Speaking.
Yeah, welcome. So glad you could join us today.
I'm Abby, by the way, and this is my co host James.
That's me, and, usually we cover a pretty wide range of topics, but today we're delving into something a bit darker, aren't we, Abby?
Oh, absolutely, James. I mean, we're really going to be peeling back the layers on one of the most infamous, most chilling figures in true crime history.
Yeah, when you think about serial killers, who immediately comes to mind for you, Abby?
It's gotta be Ted Bundy. His name just instantly pops up, and for good reason, too?
Definitely. It's a name that I think sends shivers down a lot of people's spines, even decades later. So yeah, today we're going to be diving deep into the dark history of Ted Bundy.
Get ready, folks, because this is going to be quite the journey into darkness. It's going to be a heavy one for sure.
Yeah, and I think what's so unnerving about Bundy, Abby, is that he wasn't like the stereotypical villain, right? Like he didn't fit that mold at all.
No, not at all, James. It's wild when you look into it. I mean, he really did have this outwardly normal upbringing, like almost deceptively so.
Yeah, absolutely. He was born Theodore Robert Cowell in Vermont, actually, and his early life on the surface seemed pretty typical. Like he was raised by his grandparents for a good portion of his early life, believing they were his parents, and his mother was his older sister.
Which, I mean, that's a whole other layer of complexity, right? But even with that, he presented himself as a charming, intelligent, aspiring law student. Like he was going to university. He was, doing all the right things.
Exactly. He went to the University of Washington. He studied psychology. He even worked for the Seattle Crime Prevention Advisory Committee. I mean, how ironic is that? Like the guy who would become one of the most prolific serial killers was working on crime prevention. It's mind-boggling.
It really is. And I think that's what freaks people out so much, right? Because you think of a serial killer and you often picture someone who's, I don't know, maybe a bit of a recluse or clearly disturbed. But Bundy, he had this incredibly charismatic, almost magnetic personality. He was handsome, articulate. People just genuinely liked him.
Yeah, you hear stories about people who met him and they just had no idea, like they were completely charmed, and that's what makes it so terrifying, I think. How does someone like that evolve into what he became, a monster?
Yeah, it's such a profound question, isn't it? Like, what snapped? Or was it always there, just lurking beneath that very convincing facade? I mean, it makes you really question everything, doesn't it? Like, who you meet, who you trust.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think. It's just so hard to reconcile the two images, the charming, aspiring law student and then the brutal, sadistic murderer. It doesn't compute.
It really doesn't. And that's where his whole modus operandi really comes into play, doesn't it? Like his method for luring victims. It was so manipulative.
Oh, completely. It's chilling how calculated he was. I mean, he didn't just grab people off the street. He would often feign injury, like he'd have his arm in a sling or pretend to need help with something to get women to approach him, right? Yeah, he'd often approach them in public places like university campuses or shopping centers. And, he'd look totally harmless, like, "Oh, could you help me with these books?" Or "My arm's broken. Could you help me carry this?" It's so deceptive.
So deceptive. Or even worse, he'd impersonate authority figures when he pretending to be a police officer or a security guard to get women to comply, to get into his car. It's terrifying to think about.
Yeah, that's where things really started escalating, especially in the Pacific Northwest. Like those initial disappearances in Washington and Oregon, people were just so confused. Like, what is happening, you know?
Exactly. And there was this initial almost disbelief, like these were young, often college age women just vanishing. And I think because his methods were so varied initially, it was hard for law enforcement to connect the dots right away.
Yeah, they didn't have a clear pattern, not at first. And that created a massive amount of fear, like a palpable fear in the community. Parents were scared for their daughters. Students were scared just walking around campus. I mean, it was a really unnerving time.
It really was. And, you think about the time period too. Like forensic science wasn't as advanced as it is today. So tracking him down was incredibly difficult. It was almost like chasing a ghost for a while there.
Definitely. And the public had no idea this charming, aspiring law student was like systematically preying on young women. It's still like so hard to wrap your head around, honestly. The sheer audacity of it all.
The sheer audacity, yeah. And then, speaking of audacity, what about his escapes? Like, that's a whole other level of unbelievable, right?
Oh my gosh, Abby, you're right. That's actually where it gets even crazier, if you can believe it. I mean, he didn't just evade capture once. He escaped custody multiple times.
Yeah, first in Colorado, right? I remember reading about that. Like he was in court and he jumped out of a window or something equally dramatic.
Yeah, exactly. It was in Aspen during a pretrial hearing, and he asked to use the law library. And he literally jumped out of a second-story window, like in broad daylight. It's just, you can't even make this stuff up.
I know, and then he was like on the run for what, a few days before they caught him again. Like I can't imagine the panic that must have caused for everyone. They had him and then he was just gone.
Exactly, and that was just the first one. That was like a taste of what was to come, because then, he gets recaptured, he's sent to Florida to face charges there, and he escapes again.
The Florida escape, that was like the truly mind-boggling one from a maximum security jail, wasn't it? Like, how does that even happen?
It was. He actually sawed a hole in the ceiling of his cell and then like climbed through the ventilation system, got into an employee's apartment above, and just walked out over New Year's Eve, no less. It screams calculated ruthlessness, doesn't it?
It really does, and I think that second escape, that really prolonged his reign of terror significantly, didn't it? Because he went on that whole cross-country spree after that.
He did. That's when the absolute worst of it, I mean, if it could get worse, happened. He went on to commit those like horrific crimes in Florida, including the Chi Omega sorority house murders and the attack on Cheryl Thomas, and then he abducted and murdered Kimberly Leach. It was just nonstop.
Yeah, the Florida spree it was absolutely brutal. And it just shows how utterly unhinged he was and how, like, completely remorseless. He didn't care who he hurt or where he was, just relentless.
Right? And the fact that he was already a known suspect, escaped custody, and then continued this pattern of like extreme violence across state lines, it's just beyond comprehension. It really does underscore that calculated ruthlessness you just mentioned. He was just so determined.
And then, eventually, thank goodness, he was caught, right? After all that horrific spree in Florida, and then came the trials, which, talk about a spectacle.
Oh my goodness, Abby. The Florida trials were something else. I mean, they were highly publicized, right? Like, people were absolutely riveted, for good reason, by the sheer just horror of what he had done.
Yeah, and I think what made them even more, bizarre, honestly, was the fact that he actually acted as his own attorney sometimes. Like, who does that, especially when you're facing, these kinds of charges?
I know, right? It adds this whole other layer of like his ego, his arrogance almost, doesn't it? Like he truly believed he was smarter than everyone else, smarter than the legal system. He thought he could, charm his way out of it, even in court.
Yeah, it's so unsettling to think about. Like you have this incredibly dangerous manipulative person standing there questioning witnesses, almost, performing for the cameras in a way. Like how did the jury even how did they react to that, I wonder?
Well, I mean, despite his attempts to, manipulate the proceedings, the evidence was it was just overwhelming, wasn't it? Like they had so much against him. The eyewitness accounts, the forensic evidence, even though it was, not as advanced as today, was still very damning.
Oh yeah, like the bite mark evidence, right? From the Chi Omega victims. That was like a huge piece of the puzzle that just absolutely, cemented his involvement. It was just there was no denying it.
Precisely. And that was a relatively new kind of forensic evidence at the time, too. So it must have just completely blown people away. But yeah, the cumulative effect of all that evidence, it was insurmountable. And, ultimately he was convicted, wasn't he? Multiple times.
Yeah, he was convicted for the Chi Omega murders and then later for the murder of Kimberly Leach, receiving multiple death sentences. Like, finally justice for the victims and their families, even though it took so long and it was so convoluted.
Yeah, and I think it was really a testament to the prosecution's case, honestly, that despite his antics and his attempts to control the narrative, they managed to, present such an airtight case that the conviction stuck. I mean, that's something.
James, it's so hard to wrap your head around, isn't it? Like after all of that, the trials, the convictions, you still kind of wonder like how does someone even become Ted Bundy? What was like going on psychologically?
Yeah, Abby, it's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, when you look at the psychological profile, like he was clearly a psychopath, right? The complete lack of empathy, the grandiosity, the pathological lying, it's textbook, really. But then you also have that charismatic, manipulative side that just it complicates everything.
Right? Like that's what makes it so chilling, I think, for so many people. It's not just the brutality of the crimes, but the fact that he was, this seemingly normal, even charming guy. Like he could just blend in and he used that like to his absolute advantage. It's terrifying, honestly.
Totally terrifying. And I think that's why the public's fascination with his case just it endures. It really does. I mean, even decades later, people are still watching documentaries, reading books, listening to podcasts about Ted Bundy. It's that contrast, I guess, between the monster and the man they thought they saw.
Yeah, it's that allure of evil, isn't it? Like trying to understand something so dark and unfathomable. And his charisma, oh my gosh, that was like a huge part of it. Like even people who worked with him during the trials, some of them said they still felt a pull, despite knowing what he'd done. It's just wild.
It's absolutely wild. And that charisma, it wasn't just like a social tool for him, it was a weapon. He used it to disarm his victims, to manipulate the legal system, even like to gain the trust of women who would later, write to him in prison. It's a testament to how insidious it was.
Exactly. And I think too his case had a massive impact on like true crime media as a whole. Don't you think? Like it really kind of set the stage for how these stories are told, how people consume them. It's almost like he became this archetypal figure of evil.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Bundy case, it really kind of ushered in a new era for true crime. It showed like the public appetite for these narratives, especially when there's this element of psychological complexity. And from an investigative standpoint, it certainly highlighted the need for like improved interstate communication among law enforcement too.
Yeah, for sure. Because he was able to, move so freely between states committing crimes before they really connected the dots. So like better ways of sharing information definitely came out of cases like his. It's it's a grim legacy, but a significant one in terms of like evolving police work, I guess.
Yeah, a very grim legacy, and it serves as a constant reminder of that sometimes the most dangerous individuals aren't the ones who look like monsters. Sometimes they look just like everyone else, or even, charming.
And on that incredibly chilling note, I think that brings us to the end of today's episode of Promptly Speaking. Wow, what a deep dive into just the darkness of Ted Bundy.
Yeah, absolutely, Abby. What a heavy topic, but we really appreciate everyone tuning in and joining us for this one. It's definitely a lot to unpack. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, or if you're just like enjoying the podcast in general, please take a moment to subscribe, leave us a rating, a review, wherever you're listening. It really, really helps us out.
It really does. And next week, we're actually going to be shifting gears a little bit, maybe going into something a bit lighter, or who knows, maybe even diving into another fascinating historical mystery. So, stay tuned for that.
Yeah, definitely stay tuned. For now, from Abby and myself, James, thank you so much for listening to Promptly Speaking. We'll catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.